phone, Brenda. That is what we have from this particular side.
Right, Ibrahim Karanja, I know we still have you in this conversation with David Omwoyo, the CEO of the Media Council of Kenya. So, Ibrahim, do stay with us. And let me just begin with Mr. Omwoyo. I mean, this is not the first time that we're talking about journalists being harassed. Yes, yet we've been put under that category of the essential services. A few months ago, journalists were harassed during a mini by-election poll at the London ward in Nakuru. Then again, we're talking about a journalist being, harassed by a police officer. What is the take of Media Council on this? Mr. Omwoyo? All right, looks like we are still having a bit of some challenge getting Mr. Omwoyo because he's joining us via way of phone. Mr. Omwoyo, I believe right now you can hear me. So, Mr. Omwoyo, in this conversation, I have my colleague Ibrahim Karanja, who's given us an update on this, how COVID-19 has worsened attacks against journalists in Kenya. The latest now being what happened last night. That journalist, David Omwoyo from Milele FM, being harassed by the police officer, coming months, 2 months after that harassment that we saw during the mini poll by-election in the London ward in Nakuru County. But I'd really like to know the statement, the take of the Media Council of Kenya on all these harassments attacks against journalists in the country.
Well, of course, it's very unfortunate. The first case is that the London by-election, we had, a rowdy youth attacking journalists, and it was the duty of the police to protect journalists. This time we have the police, for the uphill time, attacking journalists even after, journalists identifying themselves. And I can only tell the police that, we are just tired because the police, their work is to enforce the law. It's not to reinvent the law or set the law. There is no law that the police own on their own. The police are simply the enforcement officers. If media is gazetted as essential service, the police have no option except to respect that. If we have the police trying to set up their own laws and deciding who should operate and all that, we are basically playing God. It is irresponsible and it's wrong. And unfortunately, of course, we're going to launch a complaint tomorrow. It is like we are barely in the month of April now. It will be like the 40th complaint against the police. So consistently, the police have just become, sections of the police have become rogue. They are unable to follow the law, and the fact that they are simply unable to follow clear instruction, a gazette notice issued by the CS Interior, simply shows how the police are simply, when people complain that the police are not following the law, this is evidence that the police are consistently unable to obey the law. And it should stop now. What to do now is to ideally identify the individual police officer and hold them individually responsible, which is what we're going to demand from the Inspector General, that the individual police officers who harass the journalists literally get identified and taken to IPOA or the police disciplinary unit, so that we cannot have this continuous harassment of journalists. The police are equal to medics, they are equal to journalists, and all people who are allowed to operate outside curfew hours. So when the police try to take a higher moral ground to attempt to stop other gazetted officers from doing their job, it's just irresponsible and lack of discipline and order. They should be called to order, and by now we should hold the individual policemen squarely responsible. We are going to seek out to know who they are so they can be held responsible and accountable for their irresponsible action.
So, with all due respect, this is not the first time that we're seeing, the MCK, the Media Council of Kenya, talking about action will be taken. We've launched a complaint with the investigative authorities. And yet journalists are yet to see any action being taken against these police officers.
What we do, government bodies, the first thing we do is notify the Inspector General of our complaint. After that, we follow up. Actually, last year, around December, I reported to the IPOA and the ODPP about 18 cases of journalists which the police were not moving, because if the police refuse to act against their own, you report to the Independent Police Oversight Authority or the Director of Public Prosecutions, which we do. At least I'm not able to walk around and beat the police up around in town, but please, after you report to the police, they refuse to act. elected Director of Public Prosecution and National Commission on Human Rights, which we have done. And the last case, I think 2 weeks ago, we even reported to the Office of Ombudsman about the misbehavior, because you're simply reporting police to fellow policemen, and they have a way of going around. So initial point is that we report to the Inspector General. If we refuse to act, we report to IPOA, then we report to ODPP, which we do for our cases. At the end of every year, we should file a report and complain to IPOA when we have the police refusing to act.
I believe we still have my colleague Ibrahim Karanja on standby, if I'm not wrong. Karanja, yes. So we've, all right. Looks like we've lost Ibrahim Karanja, but let me continue having this conversation with David Omwoyo, the CEO of Media Council of Kenya. And Mr. Omwoyo, so you've reported several cases about journalists being harassed during this time of the pandemic. Is there any action that has been taken, anything that has been put on record by the Media Council of Kenya that this police officer has been arrested, there's a court in case, or they will actually pay for the damaged equipment?
We have cases in court. In a few isolated incidents, which are very saddening, is that eventually the aggressors of the journalists come and negotiate out of court settlements with the journalists. We have had this case in Baringo, another case in Western Kenya, another case in Lodwar and all that, where a journalist is harassed, they report to us, we take up the matter. By the time we're done before the police, we find that the journalist has already withdrawn the complaint, which is the biggest challenge. And the resolution we made is that after a complaint has been made, then the person cannot withdraw the case. The challenge we have is the police reluctance to investigate one of their own. And unless we initiate a private prosecution so that these guys can be served, we really hit a brick wall, because you can only report to law enforcement. Wakikata, you go to IPOA. After that, you go to ODPP, and that's where we start. But we have 18 cases actively ongoing. We hope that they get a conclusion. The whole idea is to get one. In Kiswahili wanasema hayo funzo kwa wengine. To get one, because we just have rogue behavior. We have this happening in Lodwar, then Nakuru, then we have Mombasa, then we have Kilifi and all that. We just need to get one to be funzo kwa wengine. But ideally, it's pointing to a rogue police service. People who don't want to follow the law. People won't just behave like hooligans along the streets. All
right. David Omwoyo, the CEO of Media Council of Kenya, asante sana for talking to us here on KTN News Center this morning concerning how COVID-19 has worsened the attacks against journalists in Kenya. The latest incident being that of David Omurunga, Milele FM journalist, who was roughed up by police officers yesterday, his equipment destroyed. We just wait and see what sort of action will be taken against the police officers involved in this. You've heard it from Mr. Omwoyo that they're going to launch a complaint this morning, and we wait and see what will come out of that. My colleague Ibrahim Karanja will be giving us more details as and when he gets it here on KTN News Center. So far, up to date with what is making the headlines, 9:31 a.m. here on KTN News. Allow me to take a short breather. I'll be right back with more Making the Headlines.